Hello everyone and welcome to WW What Was the week of July 11th through the 15th in WWE. I'm going to take you through the three big shows and give you three big things. Now I'm going to be completely honest with you, this week in WW What Was a bit hard to come up with, not because it was a particularly bad week. In fact, there's a few bright spots I really liked, but it was mostly because fuck all happened on the main roster. So we're going to start as always with the franchise, the flagship Monday Night Raw. And Raw echoed some worries I had from last week. Last week I mentioned a return to the dark ages of WWE booking. Specifically, I mean the era from about 2009 to about 2011, toward the later end of the brand split originally, where none of the booking made sense. It didn't seem like they were planning past a week. That's what this week really felt like. Now I'm going to graze over a couple of the minor things that were just annoyances. The Club Cena thing being basically a rehash of what it was last week. The bigger problem I had was the mid-card titles. Now, I'm going to be, again, completely honest. I'm a huge fan of the US, and more so the Intercontinental title. The Intercontinental title has always been my favorite title. I go back to matches with Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit trading it. Of course, everyone remembers Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, the great run RVD had with the belt. This week made it feel kind of like an afterthought. Now, we did start the show off with the big Battle Royal, but I don't like Battle Royals being the determinant for a number one contender. Mostly because it's a cheap way to kind of play at there's some unpredictability without much of a payoff, and this was a pretty box standard Battle Royal with a few eliminations here and there, and then finally, the dumbest waste. We had Darren Young win. Now, I'm not saying I didn't want Darren Young to win. The bigger problem I have is we haven't seen Darren Young wrestle at all in a few months or years on Raw or SmackDown. The only time we've been exposed to him is in the Bob Backlund promos he does. Now, if they would have introduced him a couple weeks ago and had Bob Backlund basically come out and say, "We're going to make Darren Young great again," then the music hits and he comes out, has a match. Let's us build, let's us get to know what Darren Young's offense looks like, how he's reformatted, all this stuff you could do. Instead, they had Baron Corbin and Apollo Crews eliminate themselves, and then Darren Young kind of sit there dumbfounded that he won. Yeah, that screams to me this is going to be the guy who takes the title. Now, the same problem I have with the US title and the Intercontinental title is that they aren't building the challengers up. Instead, what they're doing is, again, the Dark Age 50-50 booking style. You take example in the US, you had Ryder beat Sheamus on SmackDown, but now Sheamus had to beat Ryder in under 2 minutes on Raw, and then Rusev beat him up. Again, this screams high-quality challenger. Why you want a challenger to be high quality is because if you make the challenger look good, then when the champion beats him, it makes the champion look good. So then if the champion looks good, when he eventually gets beaten, the new champion looks even better. And then it progresses and everyone looks good. But to do that, someone has to lose. And there has to be some consistency to somebody winning. You have to build them up, and then you can always tear them down and build them back up again. It seems the WWE writings kind of become a rabbit high on speed, where it's like, oh, we don't need to build, we can just go now. It's disappointing. I'd like for it to be better, of course, but hopefully all eyes are on the brand split, and that's planned to be great. Now, my second big thing, I was kind of thinking of doing the Wyatt compound thing, but I'll just give a passing nod to that. Yeah, they did basically the final deletion, but with the Wyatts. Not a real lot to take away, other than, please, never, ever do that again. It was badly shot, it was hard to follow, it was hard to watch, and all we can really take is Bray Wyatt tried to murder Xavier Woods with an axe, and Braun Strowman actually did murder a truck windshield. The real big thing I wanted to take away from this part of the show, was the promo that Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins cut. Now, these guys should be getting paid Roman Reigns' purse for the match, because they are carrying this feud with him as this kind of albatross on their necks. This was one of the best promos I've seen them do. I can't really do what these guys did justice, so I'm just going to play an excerpt from Seth and then an excerpt from Dean. So here's Seth explaining why he wants it, explaining his role in the match. So give it a listen.
It really doesn't matter. It's going to be about what it's always been about between you, me, and Roman. It's going to be about who's the best. Who's the best member of the Shield? And at Battleground, I'm gonna prove to the world what I've known the entire time. I was better than you before the Shield. I was better than you during the Shield. And at Battleground, I will be better than you once again.
It clearly illustrates why Seth is in this match. He wants to prove that he is the best. He wants to prove that there was a reason he was handpicked by the Authority. He wants to prove all that. He wants to prove it to Dean Ambrose and to Roman Reigns. Now, what really sold me on this segment, really just I loved about this, was the retort that Dean Ambrose had, and how clear his motivation was. Give it a listen.
I proved a long time ago that I'm more than just a joke, that I'm more than just a utility player, because no matter how many guys came in and washed out or got themselves suspended or went to chase fantasies in some other sport, when the smoke cleared at the end of the day, I'm the guy still standing here. I'm the backbone of this industry. I'm the king of this company. It's been that way for a long time now, and now the whole world knows it.
Now, that is the Dean Ambrose I think a lot of people like. That is the Dean Ambrose who's kind of channeling his take on Mick Foley, on Stone Cold, and Brian Pillman. The focused, angry, I'm going to take your head off Dean Ambrose. Not the hot dog cart Dean Ambrose we don't talk about anymore. This feels a lot like the build to Hell in a Cell 2014, where those guys went on last and made it that they were the main event. Really well done by both. I do have to wonder, how does Roman Reigns actually fit into all this? Does he take the fall? Are they going to be stupid enough to take the belt off Ambrose? I don't know. Kind of hoping Roman Reigns gets pedigreed and then Dirty Deeds and they both pin him at the same time, and that leads to SummerSlam, Ambrose versus Rollins. And the final big bit from Raw that I took away was we found out who's going to be running SmackDown and who's going to be running Raw. And to the surprise of no one, Shane will be running SmackDown and Stephanie will be running Raw. This was teased in Vince coming out to make it official. Now, this isn't a real big shock. I think a lot of other people were hoping that he wasn't going to give it to either of them, or there was going to be some sort of surprise. That was up until things got weird. Not just in the segment with Vince saying he still wants his kids to kill each other, and he's disappointed in Stephanie for whatever, even though he writes all this crap. Where it got weird was it was announced Shane will be running SmackDown and Stephanie will be running Raw as the commissioners, no longer the COOs. Now, I always thought it was weird they were called this instead of general managers, but that was both made clear and more confusing when we found out that both Shane and Stephanie have to appoint their own general managers for their brands. So Shane and Stephanie are going to be running them, but they're going to have a general manager to run the day-to-day. What is the point of Shane and Stephanie then? What is the point of the general manager? I thought these roles would be folded into themselves. But whatever. We're going to find out who the GMs are going to be this Monday at Raw. It's highly likely I'd say Stephanie picks Triple H, whereas I think it's been leaked, not sure if it's been confirmed, but Shane's going to be picking Daniel Bryan, in which case I'm going to say a preemptive called it to that. But yeah, as much of excitement as you can take from that, it was kind of a lead balloon of an announcement. Really was hoping for a surprise. Now, as always, we come to NXT, which is the bright spot of my WWE week, and this was particularly a bright episode of NXT. We started out with a quick promo by Samoa Joe, basically confirming what we all knew, sort of, that the Nakamura Balor match would be a number one contenders match, but it was still an unofficial number one contenders match. Joe reasserted that he's the king of the hill, and then Rhino came out. So yeah, that happened. Next up, as a prelude to the main event, NXT gave us a glimpse of what we'll be seeing next week with American Alpha finally taking on the Authors of Pain, Bailey and Nia Jax, and then Rhino and Joe. So looks like that's going to be a good show next week too. And then finally, we come to the meat of what was this episode of NXT. We had Nakamura versus Balor, and my God, did this live up to the hype. Now, I can't say this was as good as Nakamura Zayn. I can't say Nakamura Zayn was as good as this was. They were both good, but for different reasons. But let's get into this. You had Balor come out, and I have to say, Balor kind of looked sad when he was coming out. I do think this may have been Finn's last match in NXT. This may have been his send-off match, which is strange. Would have thought the end would have worked for that, but okay. Then match squares off, and already the crowd is chanting, "This is awesome." Now, I'm not going to go blow by blow with the match. I will say this was a stiff, hard-hitting match. This was a strong style match. If you like kind of the MMA feel to when pro wrestling has that, this was your kind of match. Stiff strikes on the apron from Nakamura, a stiff soccer kick from Balor. Balor having him in the surfboard and then stomping on it. But it was just good. It was impactful. If you liked this match, I have a suggestion for you, and I really think you should go check out Kyle O'Reilly versus Kushida in the most recent New Japan Super Juniors tournament. It had a lot of the same feel where it's that heavy MMA influence. Balor hitting the reverse, I guess we have to call it 1916. We can't call it Bloody Sunday because PG. And then ending it with multiple Bamaye Kinshasa, whatever you want to call it, from Nakamura. Nakamura went over, and it looks like we've set up Nakamura Joe when we move to Brooklyn. Finn, like the NXT crowd chanted, "Thank you." Go to the main roster, join the club, run things. A demon up there is desperately needed. But this was really a good match. And round out our week, we're going to go kind of rapid fire through SmackDown because there really wasn't too much to SmackDown this week, but we're going to start with, again, I have to praise the opening format of SmackDown. It, in lieu of a 20-minute promo, did in 3 minutes. We're going to set up Ambrose Owens, we're going to set up Dana Sasha, and we're going to set up the Intercontinental Championship Miz TV, and then we got out of there and we started the matches. Do still really like that. Keep that up. It's surprising to have a wrestling-focused wrestling show. Now, I do want to go into a bit of depth on one thing, and that was the Intercontinental Championship Miz TV segment, because this solved some of the problems I had with Darren Young as the number one contender for the IC title. It gave us some background on Bob Backlund, which was really good to see. It was also really good to see the crowd cheer for Bob, even though the man is insane. He's in insane shape for a man his age. It also started to pit Miz against Darren Young, with Darren not having anything on the WWE network, even though that's a lie. But you're starting to tie it back into the make Darren Young great thing, although you're tipping your hand, maybe Darren wasn't that so great to start with. But the real kind of standout moment for this was the fire Darren Young showed. It wasn't a very passive, how he's kind of seemed really tamed in the Bob Backlund and him promos. This was, "I'm gonna kick your Miz," which was good to see. Can't fault that. But yeah, it actually, maybe sort of gave some idea that there's something to this feud, and it's not just we needed someone for Miz. And to round out our week, because like I said, SmackDown was basically lettuce. There's really nothing to it. All SmackDown the entire time was reminding you that we have a draft coming up. Did you know the draft's coming up? The draft's coming up. How are these guys going to improve their draft stock? The draft when SmackDown goes live. This was the last episode of SmackDown on Thursday. Over and over and over again. Not really a great show. It would have been 10 times worse had it been Michael Cole doing this instead of the buttery smooth voice of Mauro Ranallo and all the funny kind of weird alliterations he does. Yeah. The draft's coming up. That's all I can say, but for a pretty nothing week in WWE, really excited for the draft, kind of, sort of, maybe. Very about Battleground, but, yeah. For me, that WWE What Was This Week in WWE.